Dragon Ball is a series with no need for introduction, as it is easily one of the most popular anime series of all time. From its iconic characters and dedicated fanbase, this series is never going away. However, with the incredible history that this series has, and having started in Japan well before it found its way to America, it shouldn't come as a surprise that some Dragon Ball material has become lost. While some of its previous lost content has been recovered, such as the Look Back special and some original broadcast recordings, perhaps one of the most historical features regarding the localization of Dragon Ball remains missing, and it's likely that very, very few people have ever even seen it to begin with. One of the earliest Dragon Ball localization attempts was made by a company called Harmony Gold in 1989. It's believed this California-based studio took the first 5 episodes of Dragon Ball, as well as created a fusion of movies 1 and 3, and dubbed them in English for the American market. These dubs were tested on TV in certain parts of the country, but received poor ratings and were never seen again. Harmony Gold did nothing else with the series, and naturally this small amount of material fell into obscurity. While this dub is one of the most popular lost Dragon Ball dubs, we're actually going to save it for another video. I only brought it up because this is what most people believe to be the first English dub of Dragon Ball content. However, signs point towards a different origin, which predates the Harmony Gold dub by 2 years. The home of the first English dub of Dragon Ball wasn't actually in America, but in Japan. In 1964, a man by the name of William Ross founded a Tokyo-based dubbing studio called Frontier Enterprises. The studio had a focus on English dubbing specifically for export, and largely focused on Toho-style films in the 1970s, but shifted towards animated features in the 1980s. Information regarding Frontier Enterprises is rather scarce, with a lot of unverified details about the company and incomplete lists of their work floating around the internet. Where does Dragon Ball come into play? In times like this, it's really cool to gain insight from someone who was actually there while it was all happening. Meet Dick Neeskens, a voice actor who worked at Frontier for a little more than a year from early 1987 to late 1988. In an interview with Vantage Point Interviews, Neeskens recalls finding an ad and auditioning at the company, when shortly after, Neeskens claims that he was cast in Ross's production of Dragon Ball Z. This quickly caught the attention of the fanbase at the time of its discovery, though needless to say, there was a little bit of confusion regarding Neeskens' recollection. He states the production was for Dragon Ball Z, but that hadn't begun airing on Japanese television yet, so it's very unlikely an English dub was already in the works. Most likely, this rare piece of DB media was an English dub of Curse of the Phantom Rubies, as that had just released a few months prior in December. Additionally, Frontier was focusing on film and movies at this time, making it seem all the more likely. This means we have an English dub of Curse of the Phantom Rubies from 1987, making an English dub exist that is older than Harmony Gold's and one of the rarest Dragon Ball lost media of all time. The only problem is that there is no additional information about it, and no one else online has claimed to have seen it or even knew about it before the news broke. Neeskens says in his interview that he used to keep all of his scripts from Frontier, but must have thrown them away during one of his many moves. If he was able to uncover even part of the script and post a picture, it would have given us proof it existed and a feel for what the dialogue was like. Unfortunately, this means the mention of it in the interview and a now defunct LinkedIn page were the only living sources online that mentioned this project. I noticed a member in the Lost Media Wiki had contacted him, asking for more information, but to no avail. He says it was just too long ago for him to remember. Neeskens may have given us the first clue, but we have to look elsewhere. Except there isn't really anywhere else to look. This topic is one of the most extreme cases of lost media, and borderlines the lost forever category. In most instances of lost media, you can contact specific people who either worked on the production or even the company themselves if you really need to. In this case, however, both of these options are off the table. As stated previously, Frontier Enterprises was located in Tokyo but focused on English dubbing. This meant instead of hiring professionals from the area, Ross had to hire any native English speakers he could find, oftentimes resulting in common folk. As a result, most of the names that have received credit as voice talents for the studio cannot be found online, although a few of them can be. These people, while they have separate dedicated pages, have no contact whatsoever that I can find. According to a few different websites, Jeff Manning of Super Smash Bros. Fame seems to be the biggest name here, so if someone out there knows how to reach him, it might be worth asking if he remembers a Dragon Ball production at the studio. Even if I could contact more of these people, there's no guarantee they even worked on Dragon Ball, or remember it if they did. This production would have happened 32 years ago after all. What's even more unfortunate is that a few of the more frequent talents who worked for Frontier are listed as deceased, including Will Ross himself and his close friend Cliff Harrington. Even though Ross was still alive when the company dissolved in the year 2000, there's not even a chance we could find leads through there anymore. It just gets really difficult given all these circumstances, but a dissolved company might not even be the least of our concerns. In the case of the Harmony Gold dub mentioned earlier, that aired publicly on American television at one point in time, so technically someone could have seen it and recorded it. In the case of this, it's rumored to have only been shown on Japan airline flights to the US. This theory comes from the fact that Frontier actually did a lot of dubs for Japan Airlines, and again was focusing on movies at this point in the studio's life. It also explains why literally no one in the fanbase had heard of it prior to Niskin's interview. Because if you weren't flying to the US from Japan in the late 80s, then you didn't have a chance of catching it. This makes sense and is the most widely accepted theory without any more evidence to confirm or debunk it. It's possible that had Harmony Gold not picked up the rights only a couple years later, this may have found its way to the US eventually in some form. Obviously, with Harmony Gold having chopped the first movie and third movies together, there's no way they would have even wanted the full movie, never mind that it was done by a different studio. Regretfully, there's not much more to say about this topic for now, and I have no idea where to even begin looking for a copy of it. Like I said before, Frontier Enterprises is not a studio anymore, most of the people who worked on their projects aren't anywhere to be found, or can't remember this project at all. I'm not sure if Will Ross would have been able to keep anything related to the project, or if it had to be sent back to Toei, who was the license holder. If it was, there's a chance they might still have it in their archives, though as we've established, it's an incredibly obscure piece of lost media, and really I wouldn't be surprised if all the masters are gone. It was such a small, obscure production in the huge content world of Dragon Ball, I doubt they'd ever release it anyway. On the contrary, I'm sure there are some people watching this who are skeptical towards Dick's claims, as realistically he could have very well been confusing Dragon Ball for a completely different anime that he worked on. I think he's probably just calling it Z since that's what most people recognize the series as, and I do believe this really existed at one point in time, and that he's not mistaken. It's just a matter of getting the facts straight, and then actually unearthing it someday. This thing needs to get found, or at least maintain some stronger fact regarding its existence. Until that day comes though, Dragon Ball's first English dub by Frontier Enterprises will remain a mystery.